Hello race fans, Keith Collentine here. The latest edition of the official Formula 1 game arrives earlier than ever this year. We've had a chance to play F1 23, and in this video we'll give you our full verdict on all the new additions such as Breaking Point 2 and F1 World, plus those all-important gameplay changes. This is the third game in the series to appear on the latest generation of consoles, and it's still running on the same underpinnings. So what besides fresh menus and the usual new roster of cars and drivers and tracks does F1 23 have to offer? First up, the physics and the handling. It's fair to say that F1 22 drew a fair bit of criticism in this regard. Players found that cars would break traction in odd points on circuits, even on the throttle out of 5th gear and higher corners. Now, Codemasters say they've made some heavy revisions to the car handling for F1 23, and that using the default setups, cars won't snap away under throttle in quite the same way they used to at places like Turn 4 at Barcelona, for example. We found that cars do have a noticeably stronger turn-in than they did last year, and that makes it a bit more satisfying to throw them into the quicker corners. You'll really notice it at parts like the S's at Suzuka, where you have to go barreling in at high speed. Try driving the game without assists, for example, in time trial mode, and we think you'll definitely notice a difference. But when we say that the game has become a little bit easier to handle, that doesn't mean that the physics have been completely neutered. If you get into a Williams on career mode or start in the back of the grid, you are going to find yourself fighting the car more than you were before, and you will have to drive with a bit of margin. But we feel that there's definitely been a change in this respect. Physics aside, what are the other new changes to the gameplay in F1 23? We particularly like the addition of the 35% race distance. This was previously available only to esports professionals. We also like the changes that have been made to the car setup options. Previously you were limited to a 1 to 10 scale, now there's a bit more granularity in the different parameters you can set, giving you a little bit more freedom in exactly how you want to configure your car. One of the headline additions on the gameplay side is actually the return of a former feature. Red flags have been added back in F1 23. Now, during our review period, not a single red flag occurred during organic gameplay. That's not entirely unexpected. Obviously, you're more likely to trigger one if you deliberately block the circuit, but that does defeat the point somewhat. Red flags are also available online, and that could add a whole new dynamic to multiplayer races, particularly on street tracks like Monaco and Jeddah, where red flags are inevitably more likely. Speaking of tracks, you've got 26 to play with this year. That's the original 23, including Imola, which was of course cut from the calendar, and the new Las Vegas Strip Circuit in America and the Losail International Circuit in Qatar. On top of that, you get 3 bonus tracks as well. Paul Ricard in France, which of course was on the calendar until last year, the Algarve Circuit near Portimao in Portugal, which appeared on the calendar twice during the pandemic, and the Shanghai International Circuit, which has been missing from the calendar since 2019. It's not the first time we've had extra tracks in an official F1 game, but they are still a really welcome inclusion that add a little bit more variety beyond the regular calendar. If you were hoping F1 23 would bring about a drastic revamp in the behaviour of the AI cars, you're probably in for a bit of a disappointment. The computer opponents were particularly aggressive last year, to the point where many people complained they were volatile and unpredictable to race against. At best, we found that their aggressiveness had been tuned down a little bit, but we still found some of the same frustrations with the behaviour of the AI cars. For example, faster cars might get out of your way in practice and qualifying, but they're likely to stay breathing down your neck throughout your laps, which is not particularly realistic. Some of the single player modes are also noticeably little changed from past editions, particularly things like My Team, although you do have some new icons to hire, including 1997 world champion Jacques Villeneuve, race winner Pastor Maldonado, Kamui Kobayashi, and even W Series champion Jamie Chadwick. One of the bigger changes to be found in F1 23 is the return of the Breaking Point story mode, last seen in F1 2021. Breaking Point 2 picks up the story of fictional F1 drivers Aiden Jackson and Devon Butler. After developing a rivalry in the original, the pair have now teamed up together at the all-new Connosport outfit with somewhat predictable results. If you played the original Breaking Point, you'll know exactly what to expect here, as it's basically more of the same. The story's woven together through cutscenes, and the driver's motorhome becomes the hub where characters receive emails and phone calls and browse news clippings relating to the latest dramas. On the track, you're tasked with simple challenges such as reach 13th place before the end of the race, with bonus objectives to earn greater reputation for your characters. Now, it's clear that a lot of effort has gone into Breaking Point. In particular, the technology used for capturing the actors' performances is clearly a step up over the first one. But a lot of what we didn't like about the first Breaking Point really does remain in this second version. Given that they've got total freedom to tell whatever story they want, it's surprising how many of the story beats are very reminiscent of what were in the first one. That said, this year's story does benefit from the introduction of some new characters, and it is all very slick and very well produced. But we did wonder, once the credits roll, would you really go back and play it again? And in particular, would F123 have been improved a bit more if a lot of the effort put into Breaking Point had been spent in other areas of the game? Aside from Breaking Point, the other major new addition to F123 is F1 World, and in this it feels like after 3 years EA have finally added an Ultimate Team inspired feature to the F1 franchise, happily not with a single pack of cards in sight. Much like in FIFA or Madden's Ultimate Team modes, F1 World gives players control of their own team and car with a set performance level that they have to try to upgrade to compete in online and offline contests. This area of the game is all about building up what's called your tech level. The higher your tech level, the faster you should potentially be able to go. Your car and your team are split into different aspects such as power unit and brakes for your car, and your head of R&D and strategist for your team, and the performance level of all these is combined to determine your tech level. Using your F1 World car and team, you compete in challenges such as races against the AI or online against other players or time trials, earning money and resources. And you can use that to unlock better parts and staff. Like in Ultimate Team, each staff member must have a contract applied to them, which applies for a set number of races, which means you may have to invest resources to ensure that you can retain the services of your best staff. Now, if you're listening to all that and thinking, when is he going to say microtransactions, then you're right to be wary. But there is no direct way to buy high-level staff or resources using real money. Instead, F1 World resources now form the bulk of the Podium Pass items, which means that those who buy the VIP tier each season will be at an advantage. You do also earn money and resources for every lap you complete in all modes that comprise F1 World, including the standard Grand Prix or time trial modes. And you can spend your pit coins to buy XP boosts for a period of time to speed up the process. Ultimately, while F1 World is exactly the kind of game mode that offers just enough incentive for just one more race that could get some players hooked, it is easy to ignore it if it doesn't appeal to you. Thankfully, Codemasters haven't forgotten the competitive side of online play and have added an all-new division system. We think players who love racing seriously against real people in equal machinery will appreciate this. The system will be familiar to anyone who's played WRC Generations. Players are put into one of 7 different tiers, from bronze all the way up to elite, with weekly promotions and demotions to reward high achievers and punish those at the bottom. F123 also has a revised driver license system. You can now set this to be active during offline play if you want, which gives you the chance to build up your safety rating before you venture out into the world of online multiplayer. When you do that, there is a novel option now to turn collisions off on the first lap of races. That's going to be particularly useful at tracks like Monza, for example, where it's often very difficult to avoid collisions on the first lap. Whether it's serious, competitive or league racing, or getting engrossed in building up your car in F1 World, it feels like there are more options than ever before to find the form of multiplayer action that's right for you in the official F1 game. In terms of other features, it's great to see that Formula 2 is back once more. It's fair to say that we weren't as big fans of the supercars introduced 12 months ago, but they're back for another time as well. There are slight graphical improvements in F123, mostly to the weather effects. We were thrilled by the addition of VR support for PC players last year, so the lack of support for PS VR2 owners is a bit of a disappointment, especially after the potential demonstrated by Gran Turismo 7. So, with all that in mind, is F1 23 worth your money? While some decent additions have been made to the game, it otherwise still feels very familiar to the series many of us have been playing for years, and it's difficult to say whether F1 23 justifies an upgrade for those who have the previous game. There is no doubt F1 23 is a superior offering to F1 22, but it's doubtful players will hail it as the best Codemasters F1 title to date once that new game sheen has worn off. While some criticisms remain from previous editions, F1 23 impresses by offering a more customizable experience than past Codemasters F1 games have. It packs a significant amount of content and offers a truly enjoyable racing experience. But if Breaking Point 2 and F1 World don't appeal to you, and you're not in a desperate hurry to drive the two new tracks on the calendar, you might prefer to skip this one, or at least wait until it's discounted below that new price point. Thanks very much for watching. For more motorsport news, features and reviews, make sure you're following RaceFans. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram on @racefans.net, and of course, don't forget to hit subscribe for our latest videos on YouTube.